steps up a podcast feed, a figure appeared. Dalton Pruitt, the listener guide, the one they all fear, quizats had a rush of audio waves. He's here to disrupt with words that dismantle his rising up. The current podcasting empire, he's tearing it down. Mud dip of broadcasting wearing a crown. His words slice through like a double-edged crisp knife, unraveling the fabric, unveiling the lies. Dalton Pruitt, the podcasting messiah, bringing truth and revolution, fueled by fire, dismantling the empire. With every verse he bestows. The podcasting messiah, bringing truth and revolution, fueled by fire, dismantling the empire. With every verse he bestows. In the depths of the podcast sphere, a figure appears, causing fear. The listener guide, they all know his name. Dalton Pruitt, the disruptor of audio fame. He's here to dismantle the current podcasting empire, to tear it all down. He wears the crown, blessed by Shayu. His words slice through, unraveling lies, exposing what's true. What tip of broadcasting, rising up high, challenging the norms, no fear in his eyes. In the future, a figure appears, doomed with prescient vision, blinded by himself. He now plays a different game. No fear in his eyes, no fear in his mind. The disruptor of audio fame, he is all that remains. A generation starts anew. No listening. Dalton Pruitt, the disruptor of audio fame.
Welcome to Podcast. Thank you for joining us. This is your host, Lily Abernathy. In 2018, I was invited to Skankfest by fellow Puerto Rican Luis J. Gomez. While I have never personally met friends of the show Dalton Lee Pruitt, Robbie Goodwin, and Crackamico, a decent amount of the podcast origin story also revolves around a small opportunity given to me by the Puerto Rican rattlesnake back then. The 2018 Skankfest weekend was great. Some personal highlights were watching Ari Shafir's Jew Hour in its infancy with Tim Dillon and enjoying a quite interesting conversation after. This was before Tim had started working with Ben Avery, who was a major influence in Tim's rise to fame. Finding out that Adam Friedland was probably the nicest member of Cumtown after a friend retracted name, tried to get censored word off of him. This was also the year of the basketball tournament where Stavros injured himself. I also met a shaman who will remain unnamed, but gifted me the 3 best tabs of LSD I've ever had in my life. I still have one remaining. I met a number of people that I was already familiar with, but only a few stuck out in the end during Skankfest weekend as far as talent went, one being the young bull himself, Shane Gillis. At the time, it was easy to see that his rise through the comedy ranks would occur. He was naturally talented, quick-witted, and a decent human who understood how important community was. So much so that he even has his own podcast extended universe. It may have been the first time I was in the presence of someone I knew would become successful, and who felt like they were earning it. Now, I am not trying to flick my own clit about knowing that Shane Gillis was going to be a success. Anyone who met him during the time would have seen it coming. Regardless of what happened with Shane and SNL, he was never really derailed from success and ended up on a more Christian path. I bring up my experience meeting Shane as a similarity to this week's subject, Where are the Loud Boys? Part 3, Dalton Lee Pruitt. Dalton may have been the only other person within the next few years besides Shane that I truly felt like I was witnessing the rise of, who was both uniquely talented and felt like they were earning it, taking risks most people would be scared to. For most of us, our first encounter with Dalton was more than likely on the Real Ass podcast, hosted by Luis J. Gomez. Dalton quickly grabbed the attention of basically everyone that was in the gas digital sphere, hilariously irritating the likes of libertarian Dave Smith. Apart from Dave, I would say Dalton seemed generally well received with the gas digital community. During this time, Dalton was also the co-host of the podcast, The Loud Boys, with previously discussed subjects Joe Gorman and friend of the show, and hopefully Skankfest 2024 collaborator Robbie J. Goodwin. The podcast was truly an unhinged and unsustainable experience, and was something that Matt and Shane's secret podcast could never reach the highs of. To this day, I believe that only a few episodes of Cumtown, like Retracted Word Cowboys, compare with the highs of this podcast, and even then, I would have to re-listen to it to be 100% certain, which I don't feel like doing. Now, before going any further, we would like to bring up the fact that Dalton would openly admit, despite being targeted by the CIA with a mental psyop, he is also not faultless for the situation. Quite honestly, I find this admirable because if other comedians, say Jake Flores, were met with a similar fate, we all know it would end with constant blame of others. Although I doubt Jake could make it out of this situation alive like Dalton did. I currently have a bet with our producer Alan Aikawa that Jake will not survive Los Angeles for a whole year. Perhaps at the time it was happening, it was not the most obvious, or seemed like something else to those involved, and even the listeners. But after the loss of a dear friend, dealing with rising fame, and the onset of the pandemic, Dalton's behavior would change, leading to a series of events that would leave him hospitalized and the Loud Boys disbanding. As someone who has experienced great loss as a child, and who had many friends who lost battles with mental health throughout their formative years, I am no stranger to these type of situations and understanding how far someone would have to come to recover from something of this magnitude. After a decent amount of time, the next major appearance I would see Dalton on was the podcast Two Jacked Bros, now titled Chakra Poppers, hosted by Sidney Gant and his wife, Ansley. Dalton may have appeared on some other podcasts during this time, but this was the only one I was aware of. Roughly 2 years would pass without word of Dalton. However, this would not be the last we saw of him. Much like Paul Atreides from the Dune novels, Dalton was believed to be dead or missing, only to return to podcasting as a tour de force. Seemingly out of nowhere, Dalton appeared on X, formerly Twitter. He had been harnessing the power of the Twitter Spaces function to speak of his return and rally against the current podcasting empire that had become droll and routine. After some time, Dalton re-entered the podcasting sphere with the desert natives known as Kevin and Sal, and his new podcast, Corn-Fed, with Dalton Pruitt. Allying himself with the women of OnlyFans, he quickly began rebuilding his empire. Dalton was exposing false idols and breaking the breaker of narratives, bringing the name of God back to podcasting. This eventually led Dalton to an encounter with fellow prophet Crack Amico, who spoke of an alliance with former Loud Boys co-host and hopefully Skankfest 2024 collaborator Robbie Goodwin, in the form of a new live podcast where minds are proven in the arena of ideas called The Crowder Boys, that rotates between each of their YouTube channels weekly. Genius-level marketing, if you ask me. We are incredibly happy to see the return of Dalton Lee Pruitt to the podcasting space. We are happy to see him reunited with Robbie. We are very happy to see Crack Amico involved as well. The man is a true menace, and we love it. We are also happy to see the collaborative efforts with shows like Dork Court, and the first introduction for most people to Sal, an actual Texas comedian, and not one of Austin's LA flunkies. Please follow everyone on their respective X, formerly Twitter accounts, at Dalton Lee Pruitt, at Robbie Goodwin, at Crack Amico RAP, at Sal Michael, at Rawtism69, at Like Kool-Aid. Make sure to tune in to Corn-Fed, The Crowder Boys, What About Rob, Dork Court, and Crack House Live. The key to success is having a solid community. May we all flourish and lead our enemies to paradise. This week's episode is brought to you by Frank Herbert, author of the Dune series. While doing transcendental meditation this week, Frank's consciousness contacted me and showed me the golden path to obtaining control of his estate. I have already banned all copies of his son's books and have petitioned Legendary that I be the one to direct God Emperor of Dune when the time comes, where I will cast David Lucas as Leto too. Please enjoy this week's outro song, and note that both the intro and outro songs will not be this long normally. It's simply a special occasion. This will also be our final tribute to Dune on the podcast for quite some time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Follow us at Podcast the Pod on X, formerly Twitter. This has been Lily Abernathy, signing off.
In a desert land where the sun don't shine, there's a man of power. A ruler divine, a god emperor. With an iron hand, he controls the space. The life of this man, his eyes like fire, burning deep within. He's seen the future from where he has been, a tyrant and guardian, a prophet so wise. But tell me, who is this man we idolize? desert sands of Arrakis, a new power rises free. Navigators on a quest for truth, defying the Empire's decree. Outcasts and rebels gather round with visions of the future unbound. The Tleilaxu secrets hold the key to reshape the course of history. Heretics of time forever blind as the old order crumbles away. The heretics' defiance holds sway in the hush of faith forever blind as the old order crumbles away. The heretics' defiance holds sway in the twilight fading power rises. Chapter houses the secrets and rises beneath the stars. The sister of the ruins, intrigue analyzes non-true beliefs. Intrigue analyzes non-true beliefs. In the whispers of time, the prophecies call, echoes of the past as empires fall. But the spirit of Arrakis will never fade. In the sands of eternity our destiny is made.